Hi, my name's Tom and welcome to Quick Licks Weekly, and in this lesson and the subsequent following lessons we're going to be taking a look at a slightly different method of tuning the guitar. Now you might be asking why you'd want to do this, or you might already be familiar with some different ways of tuning the guitar, but hopefully in this video and the next few videos I'll sort of be trying to sort of win you over with this one. The method of tuning is called fourths or all fourths, and it is ever so slightly different from standard tuning which we're used to. Normally we tune the guitar E, A, D, G, B, E, and the fourths tuning, I've got that another guitar with that tuning just over there, I'll grab that in a second. The fourths tuning basically only affects the top two strings, and instead of it being a B and an E string, we've got a C and an F. So any music theory buffs out there will know that it's basically the equivalent of just playing this, because the top two strings are raised by a semitone. Now the first question you're probably asking is why you would want to do this. There's a lot of alternate tunings that the sort of reasons for why you'd want to do it are apparent the second you've tuned up. For example, if you're tuning to an open chord like open D or open G, then it's pretty obvious that you want to get a much more resonant or much more folky sound. Same with dadgad and tunings like that. This one sounds like this when strummed, and doesn't really it isn't an alternate tuning that's used in the same way as those. It's not the addition of extra drone strings that we're after. The reason we do it is because it basically makes the guitar and makes the fretboard more symmetrical, more logical in terms of the way it's constructed, and in a sense, more, you can think more mathematically when you construct scales and things. This comes from, I'll just point out that this, I was introduced to this tuning a long time ago, very early on in my playing, when I was big into the sort of super fast stuff. Not that I'm not at the moment, but I really wanted to get into the 8-finger tapping thing, and I bought a DVD by a guitar player called Stanley Jordan. I think the DVD was called, it may have been called Magic Touch, but I think that actually is the name of one of his albums. But go and check him out. He's a phenomenal touch guitar player, which basically means he uses all 8 fingers on the guitar. And he explains in the video that he tunes in fourths. And the reason he tunes in fourths is really the reason that everyone else tunes in fourths. But I discovered that early on and sort of shrugged it off. It was very early into my playing. And then recently, in the last sort of 2 years or so, I've discovered players like Alex Hutchins was the first guy to reignite that sort of fire in my brain. And Tom Quayle, I've reviewed one of his lesson packages already and mentioned him in a few videos. He's a fantastic player, also tunes in fourths. And the basic concept behind it is that I'm sure many of you, when you're starting off, learned to tune the guitar relative to itself, and you would play 5th fret on the low E to tune to the A, and then 5th fret on the A to the D, and so on, until you reach the G to B string, in which you do 4th fret, and then the B to E string you do 5th fret again. And what this means in interval terms is that the low two strings are tuned a 4th apart, the next two are a 4th apart, the next two are a 4th apart, the next two are a major 3rd apart, and the last two are again a 4th apart. So you can already see the sort of difference there. And this is something I picked up very early on. When I first started playing, I was initially self-taught, and then I had lessons for about a year, maybe 2 years. But initially when I started, I thought, well, why do we do that? And I never really got a firm answer. I just went along with it. At that point I was crazy into Led Zeppelin. All I wanted to do was learn how to play those riffs, so I really wasn't bothered about the theory behind it. But when you think about it, and think about it logically, tuning in all fourths makes more sense in terms of visualizing the fretboard. Now, I'm aspiring to be an improviser on the guitar. It's the thing I practice most, not just soloing and whipping up and down the neck. Things like being able to improvise chord melody arrangements. Just basically, I'm trying to achieve a really solid understanding of the fretboard, and that's what I've been trying to achieve in the 9 years that I've been playing. players like Ted Green and Joe Pass, that sort of solo jazz thing is something I'm aiming towards. And I've hit a rut in my playing where I've gotten really stuck. I've been trying to think more intervallically, and I purchased a couple of books on intervallic style guitar, and in the first couple of chapters they both sort of go over, you know, this particular shape means this interval on the guitar, unless you get to these set of strings, in which case you need to make these adjustments. And it sort of made me think, this coupled with a fantastic video interview by Alex Hutchins that I watched, that I'll post a link to, where he explains why he, you know, made the jump. He said he'd been thinking about it for a year, which is the position I was in. I've been sort of humming and hawing about it, and he basically decided one day, just made the decision that he was going to do it, going to relearn the guitar in fourths. And after watching that video, I sort of thought, well, if he can do it, why can't I? And he mentions in that video that at this point he was already a professional musician and he'd been playing for 15 years. Now I've only been playing for 9, and if he can make the change after 15 years, then I sort of think, well, you can tell from his playing that he's got an incredible knowledge of harmony and the fretboard anyway, which must have been at a decent level after 15 years. So I just sort of think, if he can unlearn everything he'd learned and start again, why can't I? Anyway, that's enough waffling from me about my journey there, but it does make more sense. Now, I'll talk about the disadvantages first, because I'm not saying that this tuning is for everybody, and I'm not saying we should throw away the rule book and teach everyone in fourths again. I'm relatively new to this tuning. I've only been in it for a week, but I've already made the decision that I'm going to stick with it. I've been doing sort of intensive practicing every day, working through scales and stuff, but to me it already makes more sense. But let me talk about the disadvantages first, so I can get those out in the open. I'm not sort of praising this wholeheartedly. I do want to sort of explain why for you it may not be perfect. Now, the first thing everyone learns on the guitar, open chords, or at least the first chord things people have interaction with. So we've got C, A, G, E, and D. Most of those are near enough impossible to play on a guitar tuned in all fourths. So that's one thing. And again, the sort of tuning of the guitar wasn't picked up on a whim. You know, someone in the 1700s didn't just sit up and go, oh, well, let's tune the guitar like this, and everyone else went, okay, you know, and followed along. It's something that's evolved over a period of time. And from what I can gather from reading old theory books and old textbooks, is that the idea of that added major third in the tuning was to make bar chord types and open chords easier for classical music. So classical guitar made all that a lot easier, and then of course that extended into folk music and rock music with the big bar chords. Now, if you're super ingrained in that sort of old school playing or folk playing, where you're relying on bar chords in everything you do and open chords all the time, this tuning may not be for you. There's certain things that you're not going to be able to do in this new tuning, not because it's bad, just because the whole zeitgeist of guitar playing, and you know, we've got so many things that are ingrained into our heads, like the big open E chord, that's come from this tuning and is very sort of focused around it, that we won't be able to emulate. But I'm not one of those people. I'm trying to get into sort of more jazz playing, and again, just a better understanding of fretboard harmony. I like to not rely on open strings wherever possible. That's a lesson I learned from Tal Farlow, who says that he doesn't like to use open strings a lot because you can't move the shapes around. So these are the disadvantages. Well, another disadvantage is that you're going to have to relearn everything, but not relearn everything enormously. Anytime you would have played a note on the B or E string, you basically just move it down. But it does require a lot of retraining yourself. I'm very used to whipping up and down that scale shape, which I had to relearn very early on, and pentatonics as well. But I will talk about those in subsequent videos. They do need relearning. So the disadvantage is you need to relearn stuff. It's not going to be pick up and play. Again, I'm giving myself a good month or two of dedicated practice before I'm going to be comfortable using this in any kind of live situation. If you're a guitar teacher, you can't really expect every single beginner guitar player to want to play in this kind of intervallic field. So for me, I am a guitar teacher, so I'm going to have to teach in standard tuning as well, which is potentially very confusing. Bar chords and open chords go out the window. So those are the disadvantages. Now onto the advantages, and for that I will grab my guitar tuned in fourths. So for advantages, basically we only need to learn, or sort of only need to learn, 1/3 of the chord shapes that we would have had to have played in standard tuning. So that's one thing, I'll elaborate that in 1 second. Also, an interval or shape on the neck is always going to be identical wherever we are, and this is the main reason that I chose to switch. For example, if we take this shape, I'm going to just play 5th fret on the low E string and 3rd fret on the A string. This is a minor third interval. I've talked about intervals in my ear training videos, so you can check them out for more information there. So this is a minor third, except if we had been on the the G to B string, in which case in standard tuning it would have been a major second. But in this tuning, because it's all fourths, it's a minor third. Wherever we are, we're going to be playing a minor third. So it helps me, because my brain just gets confused when I have to make concessions for this tuning, when I go, okay, this is a major 6, except, yeah, this is a major 6. This is a major 6, except when we're going through this string set to this string set. Everything just got very confusing and gave me headaches. So anything to make things easier for myself like that. So that's one thing. A second thing is that scales are easier to visualize because, for example, the scale pattern I played earlier, I'll just modify the top note so it fits within this tuning. Sounds like this. But the fantastic thing is, we can start that scale, this whole pattern, we can start on any string and use exactly the same pattern. So we can start on the A string, a little mistake there, that wasn't even anything to do with the tuning, that's just bad playing, and on the D string. So we can just move it around and everything works. So scale-wise in terms of adapting, wasn't really an issue, which was the thing I thought would be an issue. As soon as I switched into this tuning and stuck on a backing track, within sort of 10 minutes your brain sort of gets accustomed to it. The one thing that you may find a little more difficult is the pentatonic shapes. So instead of playing and then 5th fret and 8th fret, 5th fret and 8th fret, we have to move that shape down, so it's... So any licks that you're used to that require you to sort of bar this section, there's one lick that I used to do which is like, which I can't play anymore. That's where you're going to get an issue. Sort of your typical, you know, Jimmy Page-esque or Stevie Ray Vaughan-esque licks are not going to be as easy, certainly not for me with my tiny fingers. So there's a problem there, another disadvantage. But there are different ways of playing things. So now I play the pentatonic scale like this. So let me just talk that through if you've tuned up, just before we continue, by the way. So I've got my low E string, my A string, my D, my G, my C, and the F. And again, you can just do 5th fret on the string below to tune it up all the way through. So yeah, the way I play the pentatonic now is I play, let's do it in A, so I play 5th fret on the low E, then to the 8th, 5th to the 7th on the next string, and again on the next string, and on the G, so this is normal. And then I slide the 7th fret up to the 9th, then I play 7th on the B, 9th on the B, and by B I mean C, I'm still not fully used to this, and then 7th on the F string. And then you can also play 9th on there as well, and in fact 11th. So it's not too difficult to switch between them, you can still affect that pentatonic sound. Now the worrisome thing for me, so again the reason I adapted to this was that I thought that improvising would be a lot easier, there's a fantastic channel on YouTube called Fourths Tuning. There's a chap there who plays in fourths tuning. He's got a lovely collection of archtop guitars and acoustic guitars. There's some videos of him playing some solo guitar there, and he has a quote on one of his videos that says something along the lines of, the wonderful thing about fourths tuning is that you stop thinking about the fretboard and start thinking about the music, which is, I think, exactly sums up my feelings towards it. I was already not thinking about scale shapes. My fingers were just sort of doing what my ears were telling them, if that makes any sense at all, very early on in terms of scales. So that was fairly easy. The worry I had is, well, for a start, my vast chord knowledge, which isn't that vast, but the fair amount of chord voicings and things I've picked up, pretty much all go out the window and have to be adjusted. And chords are I found have been a lot less intuitive to change, whereas I can just improvise on the fly in single note stuff and it's not too bad. Chords, I actually have to sit down with a pen and paper and sort of have a think. So there's the problem, but an advantage to that is, like I mentioned before, you only need to learn 1/3 of the scale shapes. That and every shape is exactly the same across, means the same thing across all strings. I'll explain what that means now. I'll have to be switching between the guitars. So in standard tuning, if we want to play a major 7, so let's do A major 7, on the top 4 strings we'd have to play 2nd fret on the D, 2nd fret on the G, 2nd fret on the B, and 4th fret on the high E string. So we've got our 5th, the root, the major 3rd, and the major 7 now. So that's one voicing I'd learn. To move that onto the next set of strings, so we're just moving it one set of strings down, we need to play a different voicing. So that would be 7th fret on the A, 7th on the D, 6 on the G, and 9 on the B, which is actually quite difficult for my little fingers. So we've already got 2 voicings for this chord, and it sounds exactly the same. And if we move this down, we've got another one, so which is exactly the same as this one, except we've moved our little finger down. So that would be 12th fret on the E, 12th fret on the A, 11th fret on the D, and 13th fret on the G. So 3 different, voicings for exactly the same chord at exactly the same pitch. Now on a guitar tuned in fourths, we have not got that problem. So here's I think it's a slightly different arrangement of notes. But again, an A major 7. No, it isn't. Anyway, a slightly different arrangement of notes, but still a major 7 chord, all the same. E major 7. There we go. Excuse me. So, if we move this shape down, across all strings it's exactly the same. So yeah, we're doing E major 7 now. And it's exactly the same across all those strings. If I think, A again, yeah. Yeah, here we go. This is the voicing we would have done before on the, in standard tuning. So it's exactly the same across the strings, and the wonderful thing again, I've obviously got to switch between these 2 guitars, is on, I was thinking about this with this chord voicing, so that was the one I played when I grabbed the 4th guitar initially. So we've got, we're in G now, we're playing 3rd fret on the G, 5th fret on the A, 4th fret on the D, and 4th fret on the G. And that's G major 7. Now that's G major 7 on the low strings. If we move it up 1 fret, this is G major 7 sharp 9. Very nice chord, but completely different sound to this one, but exactly the same shape. If we move it up again, this is a minor 7. My ears are not working properly today, I think it's the weather. So if we move it up, it's a completely different chord. So we've got minor 7, major 7 sharp 9, and then major 7. On fourth tuning, it's major 7, major 7, major 7. So that's the wonderful thing. You only need to learn one scale shape, one chord shape, to be able to use it on all the different strings. Now, in the subsequent follow-ups to this, in the Quick Licks Weekly to come for the next few weeks, I know this video hasn't been very quick, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. The next lesson we're going to talk about scales specifically in this tuning. The lesson after that we're going to talk about chords specifically in this tuning, and the lesson after that we're going to be talking about arpeggios specifically in this tuning. And then after that I'm going to do a recap video to sort of explain everything, and at that point I'll have had a fair month to play with it, so hopefully I'll give you a demo of what I've managed to pick up. So I mentioned some players before, Alex Hutchins, Tom Quayle, Stanley Jordan, for you to check out if you're interested in this tuning. I found it incredibly liberating, I think is the appropriate word. It's very exciting to me because it's helped me break out of box shapes tremendously, because I'm basically just thinking in terms of, well, not even so much in shapes anymore, but intervals. Like when I'm hearing melodies in my head, my fingers can execute them a lot quicker. The only thing I am consciously going to have to make an effort for is working out better and newer chord voicings that will fall under my fingers better. And then of course there is a learning process, but anyone who is wanting to progress on the guitar is learning anyway. So I hope this has provided some insight into this tuning and why people use it, why they want to use it. There are of course more advantages than I've mentioned and more disadvantages than I've mentioned. One disadvantage that I did just remember is that if we wanted to, for example, there's a lick, something banal like that, in standard tuning you can play that in a different fingering because of that major third. So you could play it, but if you were to play it between the G and B, the D and G, no, sorry, the G and B strings, you would have to play a slightly different fingering, which could make difficult passages in music easier because you've got the option of changing. To be honest, I've very, very rarely find something that's impossible to play without practice, and anything that is impossible to play without practice, I tend not to play it. So yeah, there are plenty more advantages and disadvantages, and excuse me for talking for far too long on the subject. It's something that's very exciting to me, so hopefully the next few videos will add, basically expand this, and then, you know, providing the consensus is not wholly negative, I may continue with some of these. So thanks very much for watching, and if you stuck through to the end, then bravo to you. Next lesson we're going to be continuing with this theme. We're going to talk about scales in the new tuning. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.